I believe that is gonna be credits. Yep, that is credits. Okay, let me drag this over here. Okay, alrighty. Grandia 1 has been conquered. And we've had both a rough ride and a fun ride and a what the heck is going on ride. This has just been a ride of rides, basically. Let's see, my overall thoughts. I think the game is okay. Nothing really stands out to me as exceptional. Nothing really stands out to me as particularly awful. I think the game does some really interesting things that I've never experienced before, or at least don't remember experiencing at all. But I think the execution of those things leads for some I don't want to say like one-sided takes, but like divisive takes, perhaps. There are some decisions that they make in the game where it's cool, but the way it's done, even though that's probably the best way to do it, just doesn't feel like it's all the way satisfying, I guess, all the time. And I kind of feel that way about the story. I kind of feel that way about the combat. Feel that way about the characters. It's just, you know, overall, I like the game. I think it's okay. It's definitely not gonna be one of my favorite games of all time or anything like that. But it works for what it is. For story, was it satisfying? I will say it's satisfying. I think it completes itself. I don't think it leaves really any lingering plot threads that needed to be addressed or anything like that. So I would say I am satisfied with the way it ended, I suppose. I'll accept that. Did it feel complete? I think it does feel complete. Again, I don't think there's any lingering threads that I need to worry about. Any plot holes that they did not address that are important that I could think of anyways.
This ends the story of Justin and friends and our adventures with the Spirit Stone and Angelo. The story of Justin, the adventurer, became known throughout the world.
Spelled throughout wrong. Don't throw that out there, typo.
Aunt Lily! The ship is almost here! Hurry!
The pie isn't done yet. Sorry, dear. I'm afraid you're going to have to go without me, okay?
Okay, see ya! Let's go, Puffy!
That's supposed to be Sue?
It's been 10 years since that long adventure ended.
10 years?
The world we live in has changed so much.
Hey! Not you again! Don't you ever get tired of mischief like that?
This is no mischief. We're in training to become adventurers.
You just don't understand.
Yeah, that's right.
Do that somewhere where it won't bother people. Are you listening? No bluffing bridges.
Well, maybe things haven't changed much. But you know, it has certainly gotten busier. Today is the day I've been waiting for so long. Justin and Fina are coming home after 10 years of adventures.
They're still adventuring?
I wonder what Justin will say when he sees I've become such a beautiful lady.
And capitalize the I.
He
in
might be
I.
just so surprised that his tongue will be tied. I'm looking forward to it.
Forward.
Yay! We're in Parm. Now where's this seagull restaurant?
There's yummy food there, right? I'm hungry.
Hey, what's that?
They had 5 snot-nosed kids?
Hey, it makes noises. It makes a neat sound.
Hey, let's get it!
Neat. It's so soft.
Oh, this must be Puffy. It's just like Daddy said. Looks kind of like a lamb.
No, it doesn't.
Hey, are you... Where's your mommy and daddy?
Over there. They're still on the ship.
Ah, it's running away. Gonna catch ya.
Yay! Wait,
Get
hurry
up.
up!
Yeah.
Come on, catch him! Catch him!
Aha! Justin! Fina!
We don't get to see them? Come on, man. Come on, man. Oh, man. All right. The end. All right, that's... All right, I'm gonna keep going here. There's only some concept art for Justin being older? Okay. Darn them. Let me see. Where did I leave off on? Did it feel complete? Yes, it did feel complete. How was the pacing? The pacing about this game is kind of an interesting thing for me because there's a lot of shenanigans going on. So much so that they just kind of get in the way of some situations. Like, for example, the framework of the story is repeating itself too much. In nearly every situation, we go from town to dungeon. In the town, we get wrapped up in something mostly unrelated to our main quest and then repeat the process. Stuff like the Sea of Mermaids or the teleportation gem all feel contrived and time-wasting, especially because the importance of those areas are spoken about but are not conveyed in the game world in the same way. Specifically, the Sea of Mermaids is supposed to be this really dangerous place, and we meet this stranded girl in the middle of the ocean. She's like, "Oh, help us, save us," and we go into this like tiny little dungeon area and we just randomly fight this boss. And then after the boss is dead, it's all over. It felt so pointless, and it didn't need to be there at all if that's how it was going to be done. Yeah. Thoughts on the story? 12-ish hours into the game, I kind of feel like the game is giving me cartoon vibes. There are hijinks here and there that are neat. I kind of liked that as like towards the beginning of the game, where it was an adventure. This kid is going on an adventure with his friend, I guess. And, you meet people along the way, you recruit people along the way, and we're all just going on this really fun adventure to experience the end of the world and whatnot. And so I kind of like that at the beginning of the game. 26 hours into the game, and I admit I'm disinterested. I feel as though the game wants to do a massive plot dump at the end, which would be tragic. Overall, I feel like the game has solid or decent moments, but collectively, the story lacks any real substance to it. I haven't felt like I've learned of cool and interesting things beyond the first encounter with Liette. So I don't necessarily know if I agree with that 100% at this point, having beaten it, but I do sympathize with my 26-hour past self, because the story unfolds very slowly if you think about how it approaches Gaia. And in some respects, that's fine. Like they don't approach it in a really bad way. But when you have two story parallels going on of I want to go to Alent, and then introducing like this whole Gaia substrain that actually turns out to be like this super big thing, it just kind of feels separate, and I think I touch on this. Maybe I don't, but whatever. It kind of just feels like the first half of the game, maybe even more than the first half of the game, just doesn't really serve much of a purpose as far as furthering the plot. It didn't do much for me in that regard. Let's drop some more frames. Well, Mermaid is meant to be luring people into a trap, and they did that. Sure. I mean, it could have been more. I guess it could have been more interesting, I suppose. Let me see. I'm curious what they're going to do with Gaia and Lean story-wise. This was around 26 hours as well. These two characters are among the most interesting aspects to happen, and how the game uses them will be important. So I wrote this because at around that 26-hour mark, we were introduced to Gaia, and we were introduced to Lean being an Ikarian. And so at this point, we're like, okay, we actually have some really interesting story aspects being added in here. With Lean being an Ikarian, that opens the door to Fina being an Ikarian. And if Lean is an Ikarian working with the Garlau forces, is she doing that of her own free will? She's being forced to do that. Plus they got Gaia, which is this crazy plant thing. What are they using that for? Did they create it? Like it opened the door to a lot of interesting questions. And I personally don't feel like they took those two specific things in the directions that I wanted them to go. I guess as bad as this is to say, I wanted them to be a little bit more JRPG with it, and I don't necessarily feel like I got that. Let me see. Nobody wants to sit down and just talk about how Fina is an Ikarian and how crazy that is. This is something I think I'll also touch on, but there's a lot of really important moments in here that just don't get the attention it really needs. I think probably the most memorable moment in this game for me was when Justin and Fina were on a raft. And they were just, they needed to cross the Sea of Mermaids. And they just got a chance to just talk, and it felt like a really nice moment right there, because in a lot of ways it was kind of like it didn't quite fit with everything else that was happening in the game, but it felt realistic in the sense of what else are they gonna do? They're on this boat and they're just sailing. So they have all the time in the world to have these types of conversations. And it was just done really well, you know? Like, they were conveying feelings for each other in ways that those characters would. And so that's why I liked those particular moments. But when you get moments of really big plot developments, our characters just kind of just move it aside, you know, like, oh, Gaia, who cares? So about that adventure that we're on, you know, there's that. Seems like a JRPG, doing little fetch quests and killing a god. You know, that applies more than I would want it to, although it doesn't, it's not a significant portion, I would say. You would like to hear Lean's reasoning for joining Carlisle, but no idea about that. Even it was really an adventure to Justin until they got contact more with Ball trying to revive Gaia. I would agree with that as well, and I would also like to hear Lean's reasoning for joining. I would also like to hear Lean's reasoning for staying. Like, obviously, she loves Mullen. Obviously, she loves him, and so that could be a reason. It would have just been kind of nice to have her actually say that. I think they, for how much time they spent with Mullen and Lean, I think we could have gotten more from those characters. Let me see. I don't know what it is, but whenever we go to space in a game, I would consider fantasy, things start getting weird in a negative way for me. So this is a weird thing for me because I haven't played too many games that do this, but there's one particular game, I guess I won't spoil the name just in case, but there's a game out there that I've played, and you know, it has some sci-fi-like things in it, but it's definitely a fantasy game as far as I was concerned. And then you just go to space, and it's just weird to be in a world that has no capabilities or even like the concepts of going to space or living in space, let alone interacting with anything in space. And then you just go there. It just feels so out of place and just so completely random. And, you know, Alent didn't need to be in space. Like, why was it in space? It could have been anywhere on the world map on the planet. But for some reason, it was in space. I don't know. I think I'm alone on that one. Let's see. Was anything after the second Ball fight necessary? So we fight Ball on the ship, and then we fight Ball after that. I'm having a really difficult time remembering the specifics of that second Ball fight, but it was when we released, or when Guy was being released. He already input the spirit shard and things like that. So I wrote this I think yesterday. I think I'm just gonna say that I think the game should have ended, or like the ending sequence should have been at that particular part of the game. A lot of the moments, a lot of the developments, a lot of the areas after that just felt unnecessary. It felt like padding to me. We didn't have to deal with chasing Gaia down and going to Zilpaddon and helping out the villagers. Like, none of that really served any purpose that was necessary. when fighting Ball that second time, let's just say that was the finale of the game. You fight Ball, he fuses with Gaia, and you're like, oh no. You know, maybe you do like a mock battle, you know, and you're like, oh no, we're not doing any damage to him or whatever. What are we gonna do? And then Fina and Justin, you know, they hold hands for, you know, the last time, like, oh no, we're gonna die. And then the spirits come in, they're like, no, you know, we've been with you the whole time. We're here to save you. And then they give him the sword, and then you fight Gaia, and you beat Gaia. Maybe you go into a phase 3 after that. You know, like, just go full JRPG with it. It would have worked for me. I would have thought much higher of this game if it did that. And then Sephiroth comes in. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. For the writing, the tone of the game is starting to bother me. Justin is a very upbeat and positive person. With that, the world around him is having a lot of tragic things happen to it. Like the attack on Kafu, or the Garlau forces raising Gaia. In all of these moments, Justin and friends don't really reflect on these occurrences. It's like they laugh it off. They also move on from these issues so quickly. The ramifications of Gaia seem huge to me. I wrote this a couple days ago, around the 26-hour mark, maybe a little bit after that, stream after that. Yeah, I like that Justin is an upbeat character, but, and obviously he's young, you know. Obviously all the characters are fairly young, all things considered, but I guess they're not treating the situations that they're in seriously, and they're not really reflecting on it. And it's just kind of weird when you're playing a game and all the characters that are involved in this just, I mean, I'm going to say they don't care, but, you know, obviously that's a very exaggerated way of saying it. I guess I just needed more discussion, more talk about what is Gaia, what is it trying to do, what are we going to do about it? How does that relate to the Garlau forces? Why do they have Gaia? Who's this Ball guy, and why is he trying to do whatever with Gaia? You know, I mean, there was kind of a moment like that when Justin and Lean were together in the dungeon, and Fina and Mullen was together in the dungeon. And they kind of started something like that, but it was never with the party members together. And so that kind of bugged me throughout. That was the thing you enjoyed about the Final Fantasy VII remake character, or remake. The characters have reactions you expected. They react like they don't care. Even Final Fantasy remake really did huge padding in the first part. Even bosses itself just go too long. That it needed to be. I'll just say that I don't necessarily agree that Final Fantasy VII had a lot of padding. I'll say this: the padding in that game I was totally fine with, and yeah, but you know, whatever. For gameplay mechanics and design, what gameplay elements stand out? I like the spell system. Reminds me of Suikoden and the D&D magic system. The spell system in this game is kind of cool. Where like you have level or rank 1, 2, and 3 spells, and you know, they're more powerful the more ranks or the higher rank they are, but they can also be more expensive the higher rank they are, but you have limited amount of uses for those for all 3 ranks. And so you kind of gotta like build your spell arsenal and use them in a way that's most beneficial for you. And it's a really cool resource system. I dig it. No pun intended. let's see. The spells don't seem to be advanceable in the same way, which leads to a struggle. Leveling water and earth is much more difficult than others. This particular one really started to get me towards the second half to the end of the game as well, because leveling water is really, really tough. I started learning, at least to my understanding, that just using the most basic heal, that your level 1 heal, was the most efficient way to get water experience, and that was 3 experience per cast. And I kind of wish they approached that differently, using higher level spells, which have higher mana costs, would give more experience. I think they could have approached that better, because you're casting less in that particular instance, even if you're hitting more targets. You know, if I want to cast Dragon Zap, I can only cast that once per battle, basically, or once until I recover my MP. So I wish they did that differently. And like this same thing kind of follows with Earth. You have to cast Digging in combat to get that leveled up, and then after that you can get an AoE spell, but that costs 3 and I think rank 2. And so like just getting that experience just seemed really difficult for those 2 particular spells in comparison to the others. Let's see. Does forest magic, water/earth, really only have 1 spell, and that's Cure? So Liette was the only character, I think, that got any forest spells that were not Cure. I'm trying to think, and I don't think anyone else got those spells. Obviously, I didn't level it up very high, but that was very disappointing. I was really hoping for like a cure all debuffs. Oh wait, no. Fina got a remove block one, like remove move block or spell block, magic block one. But I really would have liked a cure all debuffs forest one or something like that. It was lacking for what I hoped I would get out of it. Let's see. I do like that you can see the requirements for spells you can learn. Allows me to set goals. I really did like this, because instead of having them hidden, I can be like, okay, I need to have this character focus on water and heal outside of combat and all this other stuff. And oh, this person needs fire, so I'm gonna have them cast these fire abilities and kill everything. I'm really happy with that particular implementation and system, and not happy with all the drop frames. Leveling water is easy because there are specific things on areas that you get damage. Just hit them and heal after that. You level up your water. So sure, if you want to exploit the system, and like I kind of admit, like I started doing things that would possibly be considered exploiting the system. But if you want to exploit the system, then yeah, obviously water is the easiest. But that's going out of your way to do that. And I wasn't that crazy. It wasn't that important to me. Let's see. I don't like the inventory system. 12 items per character is pretty tough, especially when we don't have 4 characters a good chunk of the game. I didn't like Legend of Dragoon's inventory system, and I don't like this one. Just either give me unlimited inventory space or something. Like, obviously there's limitations in this game or whatever, but I've never really been a fan of inventory limits. I think there's better ways to go about it. Um, there's and potentially more interesting ways to combat the limitations of having a limited inventory amount. And then tied to that, if your inventory is full and you get an item, you get a pretty nice and thorough menu to deal with that, to deal with that item. However, you can't actually use an item in your inventory to free up space. This really started to get me midway through the game, and then after that, I just kind of stopped caring about items. But it's really disappointing that if I get an item that heals my people, and I have this item that heals my people for 1% of that amount, like, oh, well, this is an easy trade. Let me just use that 1% heal on my people. That way I free up space. But you can't do that because you can't really access your inventory that way. It's, I wish it was a little bit different. The stash system is really cool. Seems like it may be unlimited, or at least high enough that you'll never get the limit in the first playthrough. I really like the stash system. I like how prevalent they put those around the world as well. Before the final battle, we got a stash spot, which, obviously I would have preferred a save point, but a stash spot is kind of a save point in some ways for that particular instance. So I thought that was, kind of cool, like a nice little compromise, I suppose. So I'm gonna give you that one. Let's see. Leveling up weapons is a cool way to promote some diversity in your weapon choices and not necessarily stick to the highest attack one all the time. To even add to that, it's cool that characters can use different weapons and have it change the way they attack. I don't know if this is across the board for weapons. Like, I don't know if a sword attack is different from a mace attack, but sword attacks are different from bow attacks, for example. And I like that differentiation in those. And it's really cool to kind of be rewarded for using certain weapons and actually getting them up to a certain point. It goes beyond learning skills for those specific weapons. You're getting stat bonuses for using those weapons in combat. And so I like that. Stash is unlimited for what you know, and sword, mace, and axe having advantage on specific monsters and bosses. Oh yeah. There was those tree guys where I had an axe and I was hitting those dudes for a ton. Let's see. Strangely enough, I like the hint system this game uses. Tying them to save points is pretty cool. I wish there was a way to access old hints though. So there was some hints in the beginning of the game, but it would have been nice for me to just go into my menu and be like, I unlocked this hint, so I get to read it anytime I want. I wish they added more hints. I think there's a lot more things they could talk about for this game in the hints. But for the system that I got, I was pretty happy with it. So, and it's something that I don't think I've ever experienced in a game before, of having the game tell you about the game at specific points in the game. It's handled differently than tutorials, and it's handled differently than just like here's how the game works, and we're just gonna dump it all you at the beginning of the game. You have to actively choose that particular option. And there's good ways of implementing this and bad ways, but for a game as old as this, and well, I'll just say for a game as old as this, I like the implementation. I think it's cool. I like how populated the towns are. On top of that, there's a lot of NPCs that the party members actually respond to, which is really cool. I don't know if I've ever played a game, any JRPG ever, where you just talk to a random NPC and they talk to you, and then your character or a character in your party actually talks back to them. It's super cool. More games need to do that. So mad props. For combat, the combat camera is nauseating. It actually took for Cyanesis to point this out to me, because for whatever reason, like, I just totally glossed over it. Like, I'm focused in on the character, and so like, I'm only seeing this like tiny little box. But when you actually zoom yourself out and pay attention to the entire encounter, the camera in this game is absolutely insane. Like, it just moves all the time, and it moves for the littlest things, and it's so smooth that, like, you can just get dizzy kind of paying attention to it. It needs a whole rework for it. Absolutely. Also, random NPCs having different dialogues on different moments. Well, I didn't talk to too many of the NPCs multiple times, so I didn't do that. But I will say that it was interesting that they would say one thing, like they would say, go to this town, and then if you talk to them again, they would say, it would be really cool if you went to this town because that's the next destination you got to go. Like, they reword their first sentence, which is a really weird thing, but kind of cool. They spend time to do that. If one town is having different moments, like Dwight Village or Dite Village, and that other village after Dite also having different dialogue after defeating Madrigan. Interesting. Let me see. Sometimes characters move around just because. It's kind of obnoxious. I don't know what triggers this in combat, but it's kind of annoying that, like, sometimes you put yourself in a position where you spread out your characters, and you put them there for a reason, and then your character will just, like, I feel like I'm apart from my friend over there, so I'm just gonna go walk over next to him. They just do that, and don't do that. The counterattack mechanic of attacking an enemy as they are attempting to attack is cool. I really like this, and on top of that, like, it's beneficial in the sense of you're doing more damage in that regard. You might add like more delay to it or something like that too, but I really like that. I think there's only a few games that do something like that, but it's kind of reminds me of a action combat kind of style, where you could do like flash dodges where you dodge an attack right before it hits you. It's super cool to kind of flip that around and attack them right before they attack you, and get bonus damage for it. I'm losing my voice. The inability to move characters around when movement on the battlefield is a requirement is obnoxious, especially when some bosses feel like they force that playstyle on you. I've definitely fought some boss fights, like the Castle of Dreams or whatever it's called, where if you don't spread out, you're just dead. And there's just nothing you can do about it because the boss has 3 turns. And yeah, and you know what? I don't think I have this on here, but I'm gonna add, I don't like this whole push-pull nonsense with attacks. I don't like that if I go to attack a boss with my combo attack, that kind of stuns them in the little move bar thing. And, after a little bit, then they start moving again. it seems like it's a really cool mechanic until it happens to the player. And there's just too many boss fights in this game where the boss has 3+ separate parts, and each one of those parts is attacking your party members. So you're basically spending a good chunk of the encounter being stun locked while you're dying. It's just not fun. If they remove that whole stun part of it, I think I would enjoy it more. And if the movement was consistent as well, there's a lot of inconsistencies of, like, I do a combo attack and then I'm moving a snail's pace across the little move bar. But, 5 minutes later, I do a combo attack and then I'm just pew all the way across to the very end. Nothing makes any realistic sense the way it was explained to me for this game, which sometimes was not at all. Oh man, not being able to control moving characters when AoE is a thing. Yeah, like there is an option to defend, and then you can evade and you can walk somewhere, but you can only choose predetermined points. It's super obnoxious. And on top of that, in fact, the maps and the way they kind of construct them don't feel like boxes either. It's ugh. Mega ugh. Didn't really talk so much with random NPCs, but there is so much dialogue. Even you don't like to talk to them as much, as nothing really happens after talking. But nice detail how they feel after you did, or what the situation on the moment. I think a lot of games do NPC dialogue fairly decently. I think this game does it better. It does a really good job at it. You could say the movement is janky, but at least that is worked on later games. Okay, that is great to hear. It's fantastic to hear. Let's see. Where did I leave off on? The amount of times my characters just run around and fail to do their attacks is obnoxious. This is another thing where your characters have to move around to do some attacks. But the pathing for those attacks, at least from my perspective, don't always make a whole lot of sense. There's some times where, like, if you just walk in between these two characters, which there's plenty of room to do so, then you can hit that dude. But no, you want to walk all the way around all the enemies and all the allies, and by the time you get there, you're like, oh, I don't have any attack to do, so I'm just going to sit here and chill. Super obnoxious. The types of attacks are really cool. As I understand it, combo is intended to deal the most damage, and I don't know if I agree with that right now, but the most damage and prevent the enemy from advancing on the... combo. Yeah, that's right. Prevent the enemy from advancing on the turn bar for a short period of time. The critical attack is intended to deal a moderate amount of damage, but interrupt an enemy's special attack. So, I think as we were getting later into the game and I was fighting more bosses with more turns, I was starting to get kind of an understanding of how the critical attack was supposed to be used. On the encounter bar, there's like a really long portion, and I guess that's just like the waiting time. And then there's a command input section where, you input you get the chance to input the commands for your turn. And then after that, there's the action part. And the way I am understanding it now is if you use critical on an enemy that is acting in that action bar segment, you have a chance to interrupt it. But if you use it outside of that, then you don't. And I don't know if that's 100%. I don't know if it's just less than 70% at that point. But I really wish it was more consistent in that regard, because I think critical and combo are really, really interesting ideas to approach it. But the problem is if I'm using critical, I want to counter or cancel the move. You know, like there's already disadvantages to using critical over combo. So if it was 100%, I could work with that more, because on these bosses, there's just so much going on. You have 4 parts attacking you and stun locking you. They could throw you a better bone than just what they do. Yeah. Let's see. The downside to combo and critical attacks is they don't always work, and I don't understand why. Specifically on bosses, I'm unsure if there's a threshold or a certain criteria to get. Jewel Masa mentioned that it was around 70%, but there is just sometimes, and again, like I wrote this before I just did that whole explanation, but when I wrote that, like, there's no real clear-cut way to determine if you're getting the counter, if you're getting the pushback. Like, there are some enemies where you will see them get pushed back on the bar. There are some enemies where you hit them and they just stay there. And then there are some enemies where you hit them with a combo attack and nothing happens to it. It's, I don't know, you know? I don't know. Let's see. You can push them back on waiting section as well. Also, you can change their movement to another one. And yeah, critical doesn't work as well with the game. It works only on specific bosses. That's actually another thing, is some of these bosses be cheating, you know? For example, when I was fighting Mullen 1v1, he was casting a spell, and I was like, okay, I need to interrupt that spell. So I hit critical, and I'm walking up to him, and I'm going to hit him, and then all of a sudden, he's not casting that spell anymore. He's defending. That stuff is obnoxious. Really, really obnoxious. Don't do that. Ever. And then the last thing for combat, spell animations are nice. I wish you could skip them, but the spell animations are really nice. Let's see, for dungeons, I don't have any favorite dungeons. There's quite a few annoying dungeons that I didn't write down. There was one dungeon that was like just really, really long, and I really wish I wrote that one down, because no one needed to calm down. Really, really calm down. Cardinal Sins. Removing a key party member without sufficient replacement. Sue and Gadwin got removed practically at the same time. Milda left my party. Guido left my party. Fina left my party. You know, the only consistent party member I have had in the entire game was Rap, for the most part. Rap, he joined the party and he stayed in the party the entire game. And I'm always going to Cardinal Sin games for this, because I really like the 4-party dynamic of, if like I have my core group of people, I rely on them for very specific things, very specific functions, and I don't have to worry about them leaving. And then if you introduce more characters into the picture, then it starts becoming more complex. And I'm always of the opinion that you need to let me use any character that you give me without penalty for it. And so if you're going to remove a party member, then you need to give me something in return. Legend of Dragoon is my shining example of how to do that correctly. You lose one character, and then by the time all of that nonsense is over, another character joins your party, and that character is basically, they're not exactly, but they're basically exactly the same. And I love that implementation, and more games just need to do that, you know? They really, really do. All right, so for the miscellaneous, for sound and music, I would say the music is overall very, very solid. There's not really any tracks that stand out to me as, like amazing. I think the battle theme is okay. I like this title screen. It's nothing really that I would be like, oh my goodness, this is a certified banger, but it's good, it's good enough. Let's see, the battle theme switch up in disc 2 was really cool. I think a lot of games in the PS1/PS2 era where they had multiple discs, I think a lot of them actually have done this, where they have one battle theme for disc 1, and then for disc 2 they have a like a remix or a separate battle theme or something like that, and I think that's really cool. So like there's props to that. You get the 1/3 of their skills when Sue, Gadwin, Milda, and Guido leaves, or you get scrolls to use, as choosing where you want to give those experience points. I think that's an interesting compromise. I did forget about that, so thank you for reminding me about that. I think that's an interesting compromise, but that doesn't make up for the fact that you have 3 party members instead of 4 now. Or 2 party members instead of 4. Like getting that extra experience is definitely nice. It's very appreciated. It's just, yeah, you can't remove, like specifically for the Sue and Gadwin situation. You just removed 2 party members from me, and you're expecting me to go through the rest of this with 2 party members, and you're just going to give me a little bit more experience on my spells? Like, my spells are not going to make the combat go any faster, or it's not going to be a better experience as opposed to having 4 party members, It's ridiculous. The voice acting. I'm neutral to not a fan of the voice acting. The deliveries of characters like Justin feel like memorable anime dubs for the wrong reasons. Yeah. I don't think the voice acting really does this game any real benefit, I suppose. It can get really, really silly and laughable in some areas, and in other areas it's like, okay, you did your thing. But I would say, in my opinion, most of the vast majority of the voice acting in this game are very silly and laughable and done in really awkward ways. Let's see. There are also instances of random one-liners with voice acting. As per usual, I prefer games to have their main story fully voice acted at a minimum, or no voice acting at all. This is just always a preference for me. I don't think I'll ever cardinal sin this particular thing, because it's just so arbitrary and like it's just a whatever thing. But yeah, like if you're gonna voice act a game, I'm always of the opinion everything related to the main story, you have voiceover for. Everything outside of that, don't care. Japanese are a little better. So I'll briefly discuss this, I guess. Japanese voice acting, or basically just any voice acting that is not English for me, doesn't work. It's not something that I enjoy. I like listening to the words, and I like reading them. So I always have subtitles on in like movies and things like that, because sometimes you'll hear something and you might not understand what it is, but you can read it. The problem with hearing another language is it might as well just be a music track in the background. You can't understand what's being said or anything. Like I should say I can't understand what's being said, why it's being said that way, or like the connotations of the tone and things like that. It's just noise to me. And if I can't understand it, then what's the point of hearing it? So that's kind of where I fall with non-English voice acting. Yeah. 90s cheesy voice actors. They were total amateurs in the 90s. They didn't care about voice acting in video games. That's also, that's fair. It's not something I excuse the game for, but that's totally a valid point. One thing you can say is that Gaido's voice actor in English is better overall than Japanese. I liked his unique voice. Okay, it's not the actors, it's the directors, to be honest. It could be a mixture of a lot of things. But I would definitely say that if I were to assign fault, I would probably assign fault in both, unless I hear evidence to the contrary. Let me see. For graphics, I'm not a fan of the sprite work in the remaster. There are some notable clip issues, and it looks muddy. So I looked at a random battle on YouTube a couple days ago, and it's kind of pixelated, so I can't really see it very well if I were to play this on the PlayStation 1. But whatever they did to the sprites in this game just looks weird. Looks really, really weird. Replay value, I'll just say that I judge replay value in the sense of, if I'm going to play this game again, am I going to get a different experience than if I played it the first time in regards to story? And I think I'm just going to start adding this in here. The best example that I've come across so far is Fire Emblem Three Houses. There are 3 separate paths in that game that you can take, and each one has their own take on the story, and you're experiencing different things in each one of those paths. And so I played Blue Lions, and I experienced one story. If I were to play Black Eagles, I would experience a different story, or a different take on the same story, or maybe the story diverges somewhere else. Like the experience is going to be totally different. And so I don't see me getting that in Grandia. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to say I won't get that in Grandia. So for those reasons, I'm out. No. Shark Tank reference right there. I don't see any replay value in Grandia. You play it once, you're good as far as the story is concerned. For the other section, stuff where I don't know where to put it, ran into some fairly minor issues in the game. The frame rate when walking around really takes a dip when a lot of stuff is on the screen. This is very interesting because I'm playing this on the PC, and it's definitely not my computer. Well, I guess it could be my computer in the sense of, like, if I wanted to run like a super old game on new hardware, it could be weird, but I really doubt it's that. I'm also going to add, because I don't have this on here, the voice lines and things like that started losing pace with the actual written words, which is a really interesting kind of thing to happen in a game. I've never encountered that before. Let's see. There is a video of a speedrun site of original Grandia. You could see in better resolution than the original one, or the better resolution for the original one. Even they are played on the PlayStation TV or PSP, but they look the same. Okay. I'm hoping that the Grandia 2 looks a little bit better. You think when you speedrun this game first time on the PC, you didn't have any lag issues? You don't know about the newest patch? Yeah, I remember you mentioning that as well. Obviously, I haven't played the game prior to the patch, so I have no idea. Let's see, another thing. While aboard the Grandia airship, right before and after fighting the 3 military girls, the portraits were all messed up. That was super entertaining. Like, sometimes I just come across the weirdest bugs in games, and usually I just leave it alone, like typos and things like that. Sure, I could talk about all the typos that I encountered in this game. There was a lot in the end of the game, which is really weird, because you would think the beginning and the end of a game would be really, really polished as far as writing goes. But that was just a really unique bug that I've never come across before, of like portraits are just all over the place. They don't make any sense, and it's crazy. So my very last section, if the developer is watching, I think you have a solid game here. I think if I wanted to really enjoy Grandia 2, I believe Grandia 2 is not a direct sequel. I think it's like it takes like a Final Fantasy approach, where it just goes off and does something different with new characters and things like that. But if what I would want in the sequel is for, I guess, the combat to be more consistent. I want critical to guarantee a cancel, and if that cancel has to happen in the little action space, then like I definitely want critical to be 100% cancel, because it's a very limited window that you have to pull that off. I want stun lock in combat to be removed. I personally would like a more, we'll just say a less lighthearted adventure style and tone for the main character. I'm fine with him being upbeat and, like a nice person and things like that, but I'm not necessarily fine with him being upbeat and nice to the point of complete ignorance. So there's that. I think those are primarily the biggest things that I would want to change. And I can't really think about anything else. So I would just say, once again, overall, I think the game was solid. It was okay. It's not the best game I've ever played. It's not the worst game I've ever played. It does some really cool things. It does some things I don't like. But I don't regret playing it. I'm happy to have the first Grandia title conquered in my arsenal of conquered games. I could finally go to someone else and be like, yeah, I played Grandia. I did that. Yeah. Game Arts is dead overall. Someone could buy the IP, perhaps. Not a direct sequel, not even close. Or you could say that it comes to Final Fantasy games. Yeah, I think I saw like a trailer or like random gameplay of Grandia 2 a long time ago, or maybe that was Grandia 3. I don't remember. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for me for today. I have dropped 12,873 frames, which means I need to upload all 6 hours of today's upload. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow to play a random game, and then we'll start something new once July comes around. So peace. Oh, well, actually, before I peace, why don't we raid Grayson, because he's streaming right now. All right, and I'm out of here. Peace.